Patrick Christys tonight. The world holds its breath as Iran fires more than 200 missiles at Israel. At least 8 people have been killed in a mass shooting in Tel Aviv, But
also at home, we need to take note of what is happening. Over the last 24 hours, Hezbollah have said that they are now considering launching international terror cells around the world to harm friends of Israel.
Will Iranian terrorist sleeper cells now attack us right here in Britain?
For certain UK arms exports to Israel, there does exist a clear risk that they might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law.
Labour are in a mess over this now. Is David Lammy really the right man to be Foreign Secretary during this crisis? And
further escalation serves no one. It offers nothing but more suffering for innocent people on all sides.
And is Keir Starmer really the right man to be Prime Minister if World War III kicks off? In other news,
not all cultures are equally valid. Cultures that believe in child marriage, for instance, or that women don't have equal rights.
some cultures are less valid than others. Is Kemi Badenoch right to say that? Plus,
continued membership of the European Convention on Human Rights is making it impossible for us to deport terrorists who are here walking our streets, to remove dangerous foreign criminals like rapists and murderers and paedophiles.
well, is the ECHR stopping us deporting those terrorists? I'm talking of terrorists. The man accused of radicalising the Manchester Arena bomber, Salman Abedi, is about to be released, despite the parole board saying that he was still a risk. On my panel tonight, it's the columnist and broadcaster Esther Cracker. We've got the director for the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and the political commentator, Jonathan Liss. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Get ready for a load more refugees from the Middle East. Next.
Good evening. The top stories at just after 9 o'clock. Now, the Prime Minister says Iran has menaced the Middle East for far too long as he condemns this evening's missile attack on Israel. Sir Keir Starmer said he was deeply concerned that the region is on the brink and for the risk of miscalculation. Now, Iran launched around 200 missiles, but a significant number were actually intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome. An Israeli military spokesperson says he is not aware of any injuries from the Iranian missile attack. In other news, the Conservative leadership hopefuls Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly have hit out at Nigel Farage's Reform UK party. Mr Jenrick has suggested the party's popularity is down to Tory failure and broken promises, and James Cleverly ruled out a deal with Farage to win back voters. The candidates were speaking on stage earlier today at the Conservative Party conference.
I think it's a symptom, not a cause. It exists in its current state because we failed. And by that, I don't mean you, the members of the party. I mean we in Westminster.
We need to demonstrate that we are a proper Conservative party, because Reform is a pale imitation of us. We don't need to be a pale imitation of them.
A 14-year-old girl has been left with potentially life-changing injuries after a suspected acid attack outside a school in West London. A boy, aged 16, and a 27-year-old woman were also injured after the substance, believed to be acidic, was thrown at the victims outside Westminster Academy yesterday afternoon. Police believe the teenagers were approached by a lone suspect who was on an e-scooter with a member of staff left injured after she rushed to help. The suspect is described as a tall, slim, black male wearing dark clothing with his face obscured, possibly by a mask or balaclava. And theatres across the country dimmed their lights earlier this evening to honour the legacy of Dame Maggie Smith, the star of stage and screen who died in hospital on Friday morning, aged 89. Dame Maggie had multiple Olivier Award wins, having appeared in the National Theatre's debut season in 1963, with tributes from the world of theatre remembering her greatness on the stage. And finally, Buckingham Palace has announced Her Royal Highness Princess Beatrice and her husband, Edoardo Mopelli-Mozzi, are expecting their second child together. Due in the early spring, the new arrival will be the sibling for the couple's daughter, Sienna, and the princess's stepson, Wolfie. The king has been informed and both families are delighted with the news. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening and welcome to Patrick Christys Tonight. And tonight, the world holds its breath. Iran has bombarded Israel with missiles, many piercing the Iron Dome. It came shortly after this. A mass shooting in Tel Aviv leaves at least 8 people dead, many others injured. But concerningly, there is also this.
But also at home, we need to take note of what is happening. Over the last 24 hours, Hezbollah have said that they are now considering launching international terror cells around the world to harm friends of Israel. That does mean the UK. The Home Office is to make sure that we are making sure that what is taking place in the Middle East does not cause blood on our streets.
Are Iranian-backed terrorist sleeper cells about to attack us here in Britain and other countries around the West supporting Israel? To kick us off tonight, I am taking us live to the epicentre of what frankly could prove to be the start of World War III. I'm joined by the information warfare analyst Tal Hagen, who's in Tel Aviv. Tal, thank you very much. I understand that you are now out of the bunker. Could you just describe to us, please, the moment that you were told about these missiles?
Yeah, so because a part of my work as an information analyst is to essentially review mis and disinformation that comes online constantly, I've been following the reports for the past few days, with slowly realizing that there were sources that were becoming a lot more legitimate in terms of concerns for what was going to happen. A few hours before we got the actual official alerts that there was going to be an impending ballistic missile attack from Iran, we started to see much more reliable sources. Suddenly the IDF changed its home front commands, that now everybody who was around major cities like Haifa, Jerusalem, and Tel Aviv had to get near bomb shelters. We saw that Iran was suddenly making a lot more straightforward threats, and we also saw sources high up in different governments all reporting at the exact same time that the Americans were warning about an impending attack. And these are the types of sources that we look out for, not for random unnamed sources from random anonymous accounts. And once that happened, I had told the people around me, it looks like we're going to be seeing the retaliation strikes from Iran tonight. And then shortly afterwards, we got alerts directly to our phone from the government telling us to get into shelter. And a few minutes after that, the sirens went off.
Yeah, exactly. Now, a lot of people very concerned, as indeed I was, looking at social media to see that the Iron Dome was pierced. As yet, it appears that nobody has been killed in Israel, as far as we're aware, anyway. Do you think that the mood amongst the vast majority of Israelis is that they want serious repercussions to this?
I think before we can talk about repercussions or how they're going to react, we need to first understand what actually occurred. We need to first remember that when we're viewing, for example, a lot of these missiles striking, obviously a lot more damage was caused in this retaliatory strike by Iran than on April 14th, a few months ago. When they conducted a different type of retaliatory strike where much less damage was caused. But it's hard for us to know whether or not we're seeing, for example, a part of the ballistic missile that has been blown up hitting the ground. Are they hitting a military target? Are they hitting a civilian target? Were there actually people that were killed, but simply the authorities haven't been contacted yet? And I think it'll take a while, probably another day, once the sun rises and people start going out with their phone cameras and taking photos of the damage, as well as analysts like myself who will be looking at satellite imagery and actually being able to pinpoint where we can see the differences in the damage. And only then I think that once the Israeli public, and I think that the more general world governments who are looking at the situation will have a better picture as to what actually occurred. And then I think it'll be a proper assessment to look at how the Israeli public will react.
Okay.
Of course, we already see that the Israeli government is going to react.
Yeah, no, 100%. Look, Tal, thank you very much. I'm very glad that you're safe, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us from Tel Aviv today. Great to have you there on the ground. I hope to talk to you again very, very soon. Right, let's just bring this back home, OK, because I want to talk to GB News' Home Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, I am concerned, and I know a lot of people are concerned about what this means here for us in Britain. Now, we've heard rumours there, and one former Tory MP, Alicia Kearns, was talking about it as well, about the idea of Iranian-backed terrorist sleeper cells here in Britain being told to coordinate some kind of attack. How worried about this should we be, given what's going on in the Middle East?
Well, there's lots of issues around this becoming a wider regional war in the Middle East that should worry people back home in the UK. Terrorism, of course, is one element of that, and we know that the police and security services have been concerned sometime with regard to the situation in Gaza. We have seen a terrorist attack here in the UK in Hartlepool, in which an elderly gentleman was murdered by a terrorist who was acting out of revenge, he said, for what was going on in Gaza at that time. We've seen attacks in France and in Germany in recent weeks, all linking back to Gaza as well. So we should be very concerned when Hezbollah is indicating that terror cells around the West could be activated to go after potentially Israeli or Jewish targets, but maybe UK citizens as well. But it's not just that, the terror threat, that should concern people here. There's the issue of what that does for our cost of living in the UK. We are seeing again today a civilian cargo ship targeted in the Red Sea by another one of Iran's proxies, the Houthis, firing missiles and striking that ship. So many ships now are not using the Suez Canal and taking a much longer route round Africa, which adds many thousands of pounds to the cost of transiting these vital stocks that come to Western countries, including the UK. That has inflationary pressures. We're seeing the oil price already, it's surged by 4% this evening after these attacks as well. It will impact us here. It's a faraway war, yes, in terms of its geography, but it will be felt very significantly here in the West.
100%, Mark, absolutely. Look, you've raised some great points there. I know I'm incredibly concerned about domestic terrorism as a result of this. Also, the idea now that our Labour government is monumentally split over Israel and the Middle East. Society, our multicultural society, is split on it as well. We've already had incidences of people walking through the streets of London every other Saturday, sometimes waving what appear to be terrorist flags. You've mentioned the oil and gas prices there. Well, why can't we start drilling for more oil in our seas here and try to mitigate that? That's not going to happen. Does that put us at the mercy of that? But our Prime Minister Keir Starmer has actually spoken on this tonight. I believe we can just play a little clip of that, and then I'll get you to summarise it, Mark. OK.
But I utterly condemn this attempt by the Iranian regime to harm innocent Israelis, to escalate this incredibly dangerous situation and push the region ever closer to the brink. It cannot be tolerated. We stand with Israel and we recognise her right to self-defence in the face of this aggression. Iran must stop these attacks, together with its proxies like Hezbollah.
Yeah, fine, but Mark, you know, Iran doesn't fear any reprisals. You've got Joe Biden, who arguably doesn't know what day of the week it is in the White House, and you've got Keir Starmer there, the Foreign Secretary's just withdrawn some funding for arms here. I mean, we're incredibly weak on Iran, etc., aren't we? I mean, would this have happened if Starmer hadn't been so soft?
Well, certainly there's some real concern in Israel about the stance that the Labour government has taken, cancelling some of those arms sales to Israel, being one of the most worrying issues, and also some of the rhetoric that they are seeing from the likes of our Foreign Secretary, David Lammy. But in terms of what the British government involvement this evening has been, Well, the Prime Minister is not prepared to go there just yet. He says that they are still trying to assess what the military situation on the ground was and what our involvement might have been. We can reveal that RAF Typhoons and refuelling tanker aircraft was up over the region. And of course, back in April, when there were Iranian missile strikes on Israel, the UK did play a part in downing a number of those missiles. We know that the Americans have taken part in the operation this evening, downed a significant number of the missiles heading for Israel, but as yet we don't know what, if any, involvement the UK had.
Mark, look, thank you very much. I'm going to talk to you again, hopefully, at the top of the next hour. Israel have said that they will respond, so if there's any update, we'll bring it to you. That's our Home Security Editor, Mark White. I'm going to whiz on over to the panel here, because there's a question that I think we're all going to be having to answer very, very soon in the coming weeks and months. I'm joined, of course, by Esther Krakow, Stephen Wolfe and Jonathan Liss. Stephen, I'll start with you. As this escalates, as it inevitably will, do you think we're going to be asked to take in a load more refugees from the Middle East?
Well, I think we've already got a substantial number of refugees that are coming across from different parts of the world. As we saw what happened with Syria, where we had roughly around 3 to 4 million people left that country and went across different places. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see particularly the pressure in Lebanon for people to try and escape from there. I wouldn't be surprised if those in Syria start to get worried again, because if Israel starts to go up and we see this escalate, as I anticipate it will, I think this is part of a long-term plan to get Iran and to also nullify Syria. I think there will be an expansion, whether it will be this week or whether it will be over the next coming weeks, I think so. But as a consequence of that, whenever you get human tragedy in this level, we see people fleeing. So I suspect we will get people coming here.
How do you feel about that, Esther? Because I think that the British public, not all, of course, but quite a lot of them, are frankly at their wits' end with the amount of humanitarian work we do in terms of taking people, be it legal or illegal.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a concern, the idea that we would see an influx potentially of refugees from this part of the world, particularly on the question about the values and whether, you know, there's a higher risk of extremism and radicalization. But I think the bigger threat really is radicalization here at home. So not necessarily sleeper cells, because I don't think, you know, Hezbollah has the sophistication to have hundreds of sleeper cells. But it doesn't really take sleeper cells. It takes one madman who's willing to risk their lives and the lives of other people to terrorize the public. That's the definition of terrorism. And I think that's what concerns me, because whenever you have situations like this and people feel very, very strongly, one way or another, about the situation in Israel and the Middle East more broadly, you know, there are questions of people within, particularly across many Western cities, that really feel an allegiance to what's going on there and are willing to make a statement against the lives of the people that they live with in the country that they're residing in. That's what concerns me. It doesn't really take, you know, hundreds of people in sleeper cells with the sophistication of a modern military to really wreak havoc. It just takes one or two people. Acid attacks on school children, you know, bombing concerts, you know, taking a gun and shooting people in a supermarket. I mean, the ideas are endless.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jonathan, just on that, I mean, how concerned should we be? It seems like in this fabulous multicultural country that we live in now, actually sometimes that means that you have a lot of people who are potentially quite sympathetic sometimes to groups like Hezbollah.
I presume you're being sarcastic when you talk about fabulous multicultural country that we have.
Well, sometimes when I think it means that we have things like we've seen on the streets, like people, you know, with terrorist flags, etc. Yeah.
What terrorist flags are you talking about?
Yeah, so we actually have clips of them that we're going to play later on at the 10 p.m, where people during some of these marches had the Hizb ut-Tahrir flag and the flag of Islamic State, etc.
Well, obviously, I would oppose that. If there's a prescribed organisation, people shouldn't be flying the flags. But I'm slightly puzzled by the angle you're taking on this. If there's an urgent humanitarian catastrophe, I don't think it reflects very well on us the first question we ask is, what does that mean about people who are demonstrably fleeing desperate situations? How could they possibly? What if they dare to come and ask for help from us? I mean, it's not a very sort of charitable response, is it? The first thing we need to worry about is, first of all, that people are not being killed in their thousands, which fortunately Israel has the capacity to stave off attacks. People of Lebanon are far less fortunate, and what we're seeing in Lebanon is hundreds, thousands potentially in the next few weeks of people who have nothing to do with Hezbollah, but who are unfortunate enough to be in the vicinity of potential Hezbollah fighters who are going to lose
wonder if it's that security concern, really, that I'm trying to get at here. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later on in the show and potentially tie that in a bit to some of the comments that Kemi Badenoch made as well, but about whether or not we actually will have any idea when it comes to this notion, if Israel do decide to plough on into Lebanon, which seems quite likely and seems, I mean, almost definite. You know, there's going to be a humanitarian risk there. There's going to be people who say, can we come to Britain? We may well say yes. Do we know who all those people are? You know, this is a difficult situation for us, isn't it?
Well, we didn't know who they were when they were leaving Syria. To be fair, we didn't really know who they were when they were leaving Ukraine either, which is why we knew that our own security services were monitoring those so that we didn't have, in that case, Russian sleeper cells. Jonathan is right in the sense that we do have to be aware now that this actually falls fully under the UN Convention on Refugees. This is exactly the same sort of concerns that we would have. And if we are going to look at expanding a war across the Middle East, which I think that we're going to see, then all the European countries are going to have to be aware of the numbers coming through. But you're right in the sense that we won't know accurately who everybody is, what their intentions will be. And we do know that small numbers of them will start causing big problematical issues, just as we saw in my hometown of Manchester, and I do not want that to happen.
The reason why I'm going to pause this now is because we're going to return to a similar-ish topic a little bit later on with you all, and we're going to have another panel chat on that, because that, I think, is a massive story. And on that, look, still to come in the next hour.
Of course, not all cultures are equally valid. Cultures that believe in child marriage, for instance, or that women don't have equal rights.
So, Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch has claimed that some cultures are less valid than others. So is she right on that? Yeah, that's the topic that my panel are going to be thrashing out in the next few minutes. But up next, Tory leadership hopeful, another one, Robert Jenrick's been slammed for claiming that Britain's membership of the ECHR would have stopped us killing the next bin Laden. Look, I think he's got a point, though, hasn't he? Isn't the ECHR actually making Britain less safe? Gonna have a look at some of the people who we've been forced to keep as a result of the ECHR. Going head-to-head on that, former UKIP leader Henry Bolton and the human rights lawyer Job Carr. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are now delighted to be joined by comedian and my beautiful friend, Francine Lewis, who's here to share with us her upcoming book, The Last Laugh, and an exciting competition in collaboration with none other than that mean Simon Cowell. Francine,
he's not so mean anymore.
Oh, is he not?
He's not. And do you know what?
Having a child, is it maybe?
Definitely. It's really weird because I really liked Simon. He was nasty. I just found that, I don't know, quite sexy. Now he's way too nice. Way too nice.
That's what they say, isn't it? You get all the nice guys say, I never get any luck with women, and they always say I'm too nice.
Do you know what? The truth is, I've always thought Simon was lovely. He's such a nice guy. Like, when I was doing Britain's Got Talent, I was very, very excited, you know, to meet Simon again, because it was the second time I'd actually met him. And I always thought he was such a charming, lovely man.
Of course, you are more recently well known for BGT and your impressions and whatnot.
Do you know what? I do watch a lot of reality TV, a lot of that sort of stuff.
What do you watch?
Oh, I love Towie, whenever Love Island's on. Seriously, honeys, 100% definitely. You got to watch Essie. It's all about Towie. Love it, seriously. So I'm always doing, you know, whatever the new reality shows are.
Another favourite is Katie Price, and we've got a video. I think we've got a selfie video of us doing.
Have we?
Yeah, we have. From
I'm showing
years ago.
Tatiana to Katie Price, which she does amazingly. Come on, Tatiana, let's...
No, I don't.
Tatiana,
Katie, there's a mixture between Katie Price and Tatiana.
What do you think? I love when people take me off. It shows what a big star I am.
It's the lick of the lips.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We are only on GB News. Now, is the ECHR making us all less safe? It's time for the head-to-head. Well, after Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch was criticised yesterday for her comments about maternity pay, today it was the turn of her rival Robert Jenrick, who was under, in my view, unfair criticism for claiming that the SAS are, quote, are killing and not capturing to prevent the ECHR judges from setting terror suspects free. But speaking to GB News' political editor Christopher Hope, Robert Jenrick defended his comments.
I don't want our human rights apparatus to be standing in the way of taking the right operational decisions for our national security and for protecting the lives of the brave men and women who serve in our special forces.
There's all this confected outrage here now about what he's had to say. Let's have a look at the receipts, shall we? Back in September 2023, the former Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, said the exact same thing. He said that human rights laws, including the ECHR, have become a serious risk to national security. They're thwarting efforts to stop terrorists. In fact, the European courts have been meddling in Britain's national security for years. Back in 2012, ECHR judges stopped the UK government from sending radical cleric Abu Qatada back to Jordan. In 2011, the court ruled that the UK could not deport a Nigerian man convicted of rape. And just this month, a Ugandan man who beat a man to death in London escaped deportation because his lawyers successfully argued that deporting him would breach the ECHR. So we now all have to live amongst these people, don't we, because of the ECHR. So tonight I'm asking, is that making Britain less safe? Going head-to-head on this now, the former UKIP leader, Henry Bolton, and human rights lawyer, Shoaib Khan. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to see you again. Henry, I'll start with you. Is the ECHR making it more difficult for us to deport terrorists?
Yes, absolutely. There is no question of that. If the ECHR requires a whole range of legal hoops that have to be jumped through in order to deport anybody who wants to resist that deportation. So appeals processes and so on. And there are also a whole range of precedent, there's precedent law and so on. It's a complex piece, but ultimately the ECHR is designed to protect human rights, including of the offender. Now, where we've got a problem is where the human rights of the offender clash with the national security and safety interests of the citizens of the country concerned, which is the problem we have here. Now, in terms of what Robert said, I don't think he actually mentioned the SAS. So correct me if I'm wrong. He mentioned special forces. Yeah. But when I was in Afghanistan, I was involved sitting alongside the general officer commanding who was responsible for making the operational go, no-go decisions on targeting what we called high-value individuals. Now, I'm not going to talk about much of the mechanics there, but suffice to say, there were a couple of different nations, 3 or 4 different nations represented in that group of about 30 officers who were briefing on intelligence, operational options and so on for attacking people who were in the command and control chain of people who wanted to do our people harm. And there was legal advice provided to British commanders, other United States commanders and others, and they varied because different countries were under different constraints. And the United Kingdom and the European forces were under tighter constraints because of the ECHR than the Americans were.
I'll come back to you. Shoaib, on that point exactly there, you've heard it straight from the horse's mouth. That chap in Afghanistan, seen it firsthand. We are under tighter constraints because of the ECHR. We need to leave it, do we?
I know. I mean, we may well be under tighter constraints, but good for us. That's good. That's the whole point. We need to jump through hoops. If you're going to kill someone, capture someone, we're basically talking about rendering someone across borders. Go to Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, any country, just pick up someone, put them in a plane, bring them to Britain. Then you should jump through hoops. It shouldn't be a matter of, well, that's what the officer or the soldier decided at the time. No, you have to justify it. And that's what the ECHR says. And it's surprising, after everything that happened in Iran, Iraq, our forces, American forces, the way they treated prisoners, are we still having this conversation? How are we still having this conversation? Of course, you should have to jump through hoops. The point is, and that's exactly what the ECHR says, you have to balance it. I mean, like Henry was just saying, it says, yes, you have to balance their rights with theirs. And there's always exceptions for national security. If you can demonstrate it was essential or important for national security, then that's fine. And also, I mean, just really quickly on Jendrik's point generally, I think, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I was about to say, I'm not sure quite, what he was saying. But to be honest, I don't think even he knew what he was saying. On the one hand, he's saying, we're not allowed to capture people. That's why we have to kill them. On the other hand, well, if we carried out an operation on bin Laden, we would not have been allowed to kill him. We'd have to capture him. So I'm not quite sure what he's saying.
Yeah, OK, all right. I think there's other aspects to this, though, Henry, aren't there? When it comes to national safety. Look, terrorists are one thing, all right? But, a Nigerian rapist, we can't deport them. We've got a Ugandan murderer, we can't deport him. We want to, but then a foreign court tells us we can't, and we stick to that. Surely that's wrong.
Yeah, I believe it is wrong. I think we should have a sovereign, our governments should have a sovereign right and ability to take the decisions it needs to keep British citizens, particularly at home, but also abroad, safe and secure. And if an individual threatens that, then I'm sorry, his rights or her rights they're subordinate to the rights of the British citizens in the UK to be safe. And we've got a problem here. And, the ECHR, sadly, has got, I think, 47, signatories? And to open it up for change and amendment would be diplomatically impossible. It would take many, many years. And we haven't got years. We've got people here now who are constituting a threat.
I get the sense of urgency. Shoaib, I want to throw this over to you because, look, I think if people felt as though the ECHR was a completely objective body, like I would argue it's supposed to be, an arbitrator of the law, then maybe we'd be inclined to accept it. But, I look at in April 2024, European Court of Human Rights ruled that the Swiss government's climate policies violated human rights. They sided with a bunch of Swiss geriatrics because they felt as though the country wasn't going far enough when it came to tackling climate change. Many people felt that was an overtly political decision, the kind of decision that the likes of Greta Thunberg would have made. So is this not actually very much a political court? Are we just seeing now here kind of activists in robes telling us who we can and can't keep in our country?
No, of course not. I mean, first, just a few of the cases that we spoke about. And first, even generally, Robert Jendrik's video, I think he mentioned 4 cases. 3 of them, as far as I know, aren't even European court cases. They're actually domestic UK court cases. So, I mean, that's the first thing. But secondly, we spoke about Abu Qatada. The whole point was you have to do things properly. That's why eventually when we renegotiated our treaty with Jordan, Theresa May actually deported him, and properly. And that's the point, The Jordanians had evidence that they had obtained by torture. The ECHR said you shouldn't be using torture evidence. The Jordanians promised not to use it, so we deported him. And in fact, we actually had to reform the Jordanian prison system because now they don't use torture evidence. So, of course, that's a good thing. Same with, for instance, we saw with Rwanda. The point is that was a disastrous treaty that Priti Patel had signed. And then eventually even our Supreme Court said, that's absolutely awful. Go and look at it again. And we renegotiated with Rwanda. And then eventually the parliament said, yes, now it's lawful.
Yeah, it was so awful. It was so awful that the Germans are possibly now going to do the exact same thing with the facilities the British taxpayer has built. We'll have to wait and see, I'm afraid. Both of you, thank you very much. Good stuff, as ever. Former UKIP leader Henry Bolton and the human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan. Great, thank you very much. Coming up, Felix Schofield's made his TV comeback. Can you believe this? He has played the pity card.
It was an unwise and unprofessional thing to do. I will be forever sorry.
Yeah. So does anyone actually really feel sorry for him? That's what I'll be asking the crisis manager and experienced PR expert, Edward Karam James, when he joins me very soon. But yes, we are also going to be doing a heck of a lot of talking about what on earth is going on here in Britain. Kemi Badenoch piped up. She said that some cultures are less valid than others, so we're going to be talking about all of that. I'm also going to be talking a lot as well about what the domestic terror threat is like here. Why? Well, the person who is believed to have radicalised the Manchester Arena bomber is about to walk free, despite the parole board saying that he still poses a risk. What is going on with all this madness? All that and more very shortly.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's becoming drier from the west, but it's taking a time with still a lot of cloud across the UK and some showery rain. That rain, well, it's causing some issues across the east of England, and it will continue into the evening as the area of low pressure that's been with us for some days slowly pulls away. So some wet weather to come for East Anglia and the southeast overnight. Otherwise, the rain in the east tends to turn lighter and more showery as the night progresses, but we keep a lot of cloud for much of England and Wales. The clearest skies overnight will be for Scotland and Northern Ireland, 1 or 2 showers. Otherwise, under those clear skies, temperatures falling into the mid or even low single figures in some sheltered spots. That's where we've got the brightest weather to start off Wednesday. Northern Ireland and Scotland, plenty of blue skies. Quite a difference from much of central, eastern and southern England, where there's a lot of low cloud, some mist and murk and some drizzle. Likewise for central and eastern Wales, but West Wales will see much brighter skies. Northern England turning brighter through the morning. Scotland and Northern Ireland, meanwhile, apart from 1 or 2 showers in the east, we'll see plenty of sunny skies. And we keep the sunshine across western Scotland and Northern Ireland throughout Wednesday. That's the place to be for widespread blue skies, and actually it's looking brighter for Northern England and North Wales. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud cover, and we've got these showers continuing to roll into East Anglia, the East Midlands and the southeast through the day. So that's going to make it feel a little less pleasant, and a brisk wind from the east as well will hold temperatures back in the mid-teens, but elsewhere feeling warm enough in any sunny spells. Then going into the evening, the clear skies in the north will progress southwards, and so a chilly start for many of us on Thursday, but actually plenty of fine weather through the day, sunny spells and feeling pleasant, but into the weekend, more rain to come.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, coming up, Philip Schofield, believe it or not, appears to be playing the pity card. I'll show you some clips that I think will turn your stomach. But first, not all cultures are equally valid when it comes to immigration, and failing to recognise that is naive. That is according to the Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch. Writing over the weekend in the Sunday Telegraph, Badenoch said, "We cannot be naive and assume that immigrants will automatically abandon ancestral..." Oh, here we go. Ethnico hostilities at the border, or that all cultures are equally valid. They are not. I am struck, for example, by the number of recent immigrants to the UK who hate Israel. That sentiment has no place here. She then went on the BBC on Sunday and essentially backed up what she said. The Tory leadership candidate was pressed on her comments.
You've written this morning about immigration.
And you write that we cannot assume that all cultures are equally valid. So which cultures, in your view, are less valid than others?
Oh, lots. Cultures that believe in child marriage, for instance, or that women don't have equal rights. I actually think it's extraordinary that people think that's an unusual or controversial thing to say. Of course, not all cultures are equally valid.
Yeah, I mean, what's controversial about that? Seeing child marriage, FGM, throwing gay people off buildings, I don't think they're valid, are they?
Yeah, I mean, I think I share her sentiments here. I think it's incredible that people feel offended about that. You know, culture in Germany in the 1930s wasn't valid when it's sort of terrorising Jewish people. I mean, it's obvious that cultures evolve, and hopefully for the better. You rarely see cultures trying to regress and going back to days of, like, child sacrifice, for example. But I think the fact that the optics of that was quite interesting, that you have this black British woman explaining that to a white female journalist. And on some level, you were thinking, OK, if I was in her shoes, you're a woman, there are some cultures that would have forced you to get married at 15. Is that a culture that you would think is valid? I mean, I think the optics of that was quite interesting, because you wouldn't expect for her to ask such a naive question, like, what do you mean by that?
I think it speaks a lot to the psychology, actually, of a lot of the kind of chattering media classes. Jonathan, you're pulling a face. What's going on?
Which culture throws gay people off buildings, Patrick?
Well, we see it, don't we, in parts of the Middle East?
Which culture does that?
What do you
because, no, OK, it's a really important point.
I can tell you
it's a really
culture.
important point, because a political party or a regime is not the same as a culture.
You're trying to make a point there, but we talk
I am making a point.
Yeah, but we're fine. But we talk about the culture of... We talk about it in football clubs. What's the culture like in the dressing room, or in workplaces? What's the culture in the workplace? Which doesn't necessarily mean a race of people. It means a culture or a set of norms.
Fine.
In that particular area,
So, for that reason, you could say that a commander from ISIS should not be allowed to come to Britain. If that's the point that you're making, I completely agree with you.
Well,
fine,
duh.
that's the point. But that's not the point that she was making, and you know it perfectly well.
No,
she was saying that some cultures... She was saying that some cultures are better than others, and what she's really doing is sticking the boot into people, the easy targets, the low-hanging fruit for the Conservative right, such as Muslim people, such as cultures that she thinks... and what does it actually mean? If we look at the vast... If you look at the vast...
It's very clear what it means. If you look across history, where you can look at the Incas. Incas had a culture that was clearly brutal.
Stephen, let's look at history.
If you look, yes, and you can go through our own culture. What you've got here is a cultural view of the liberal media, as shown by the interviewer, that it says and believes that all people are exactly the same wherever they are in the world, irrespective of which culture you live in.
No one is saying that people are the same.
And the point is, in some cultures, you do recognise that life is different. If you go to Afghanistan, that is a country run by a leadership, but it's got a culture. And in that culture, they do
women
not
can't
treat
show
women
their faces in
very,
public.
very acceptable. Do you accept that that is a culture in Afghanistan, or are you just simply saying it's a land
If you look at Afghanistan, you'll find that there are all kinds of people in that culture who hate the Taliban and who want equal rights for women and all kinds of things.
Well,
it is such an imperialist attitude to say, well, those values are inferior to ours, and obviously we need to go and save them. No, it's not. And if you look at the vast, if you look at the vast majority, look at the vast majority of British. If you look at the vast majority of British history, you will find that child marriage was completely normalised, that gay people were completely vilified, that women didn't have equal rights. How did that become? How do we decide what British values are, what British culture is, with the vast majority of British history? Those have been our values as well.
But what you're saying, Jonathan, there, looking at history, is actually reversal of what your initial point is. You're accepting that there were some cultures that had bad issues in them, although it was Britain in the past. A reverse colonialism by saying that it's not there existing.
How is that the reverse? How is that the reverse point?
Because you're not saying it accepts across the world.
This idea that there are some people in Afghanistan that don't agree with the Taliban, and therefore the statement that culture, the predominant culture, is invalid is ridiculous. So are we supposed to pick out and cherry pick? And how do we know when someone has changed their views legitimately? Are we supposed to take the risk? The bottom line here is a culture is a set of values and ideas that is normalized within a certain group of people. Yes, you always have people that don't necessarily agree with it because of how it affects them, or they just stand out. But that does not negate the fact that you have such a thing as a culture, a predominant culture. And I'll give you an example. I grew up in a culture where I basically couldn't even talk about homosexuality until I was 14 and I moved here. They didn't even want to speak about it to me because they were so scared that if you talk about it, you make children curious and then they'll somehow become gay themselves. That is a culture. right? I could have members of my own family that didn't agree with it, but that is a culture that I grew up in. Now, you can say that I personally didn't agree with it. I didn't even ever talk about it or think about it, but that was the culture within which I grew up. Now, if you have 20 people from that culture and bring them to Britain, and they say, well, the culture that I grew up in is I don't even recognise gay rights, don't you think that would necessarily affect people in this country that say, actually, you can't come here with those attitudes because that is not part of our culture?
No,
That's what's being said here.
I don't think that you can say that people should not be allowed to come here. I think that it's...
I do think you should.
Well, OK, well, I'm disagreeing with you. I'm saying that I don't think that you should essentialise culture and say this is a culture and this is that culture, for exactly the reason I just gave, that cultures can change all the time, and people in those cultures can have different opinions from the prevailing culture. We all have culture, it's all different. I think we always need to turn the mirror on ourselves and see what are we doing.
Are we a charity?
I think it's completely legitimate as well to say...
So what you're essentially saying is we can pick the people within the culture.
60%, that's the amount that honour-based abuse in England increased in 2 years. It's an article here in The Guardian, and 60% that increase has gone. Do we really need to turn the mirror on ourselves when we look at that? I don't know if we do.
Well, I think that also the point is that when you have individuals who are doing things, and when they come from the white, dominant Christian culture, they never have to account for anybody apart from themselves. But when someone from an ethnic minority...
Yes,
no, they don't, because they have to account for them. They have to account for anyone. When a crime is committed by a white Christian person, that's a reflection on them. It's not a reflection on white people or Christian people.
I massively disagree. Look at literally what happened with the rise recently. All of a sudden, everybody seems to have to justify
white privilege.
Yeah.
Skinheads. I've seen this since the 80s.
Guys, we're going to have to whiz this on, I'm afraid. We're massively overrunning here. We're going to be talking a bit about, obviously, what's been going on in Iran and Israel, crucially. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about whether or not Keir Starmer is actually the right man to steer Britain through this crisis. Talk now as well of Hezbollah sleeper cells here in Britain. What is the level of threat? But next, Philip Schofield's made his TV comeback. He's played the pity card.
It was an unwise and unprofessional thing to do. We'll be forever sorry.
Well, I've got a crisis manager on very, very shortly. Do you feel sorry for Philip Schofield? Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Sleep Report 2024 is based on a comprehensive survey conducted all across the country, and the report found that over half the population, get this, falls short of the recommended 7+ hours of required sleep each night. And shockingly, 1 in 4 of us is getting 5 hours or less, and that includes you, doesn't it?
Yes, I'm very bad at sleep. 4 or 5, I'd say.
That's
awful. A bit like
awful.
Maggie Thatcher. What would you get on average?
I'd say at least 6. 7 probably average.
That's probably not good. I think you probably need 8. Well, almost half of Brits rate their sleep quality as 5 out of 10 or lower.
Dr Manesh Shah and Dr Sita Shah joins us now to tell us all about the sleep and how Brits are struggling. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
First questions to you both. How many hours do you both get?
God, I think it varies. I try and hit that 7 hours of sleep.
Why are Brits so bad at getting sleep, especially in terms of hours? 4 or 5 hours for me, 6 hours for you. It's the same for everybody out there in the UK. We're just not going to bed early enough. Is it as simple as that? Or is it slightly more complicated?
Yeah, so I think the key is to establish a good routine. So waking up at the same time every day, making sure that you're going to sleep at the same time every day, and being quite sort of rigid and strict with yourself when it comes to those timings.
And also, it's not just the length of, I get, say, 7 hours, it's the quality, isn't it? You've got different phases of sleep.
Yeah.
Just explain those. Is it, as far as I remember, REM, deep sleep? Just tell us about that.
Correct, yeah. So, essentially, there's 4 stages to sleep. So there's stage 1 and stage 2, which are your lighter stages of sleep. Then stage 3 is your deeper sleep. And then you've got the stage 4, which is your REM. Which is a rapid eye movement stage. And it's the stage 3 and the REM sleep which is really, really important for restorative and regenerative sleep.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, last night, Philip Schofield's TV comeback aired on Channel 5 as he was cast away on a Madagascan desert island to reflect on his departure from showbiz last year after it emerged he lied and later admitted to an affair with a younger employee at ITV. Schofield had much to say. Now, he started with, well, a bit of an apology.
It is like the biggest grenade going off in your life. And you know you let people down, you know you've let yourself down, and you know that, you know, it was an unwise and unprofessional thing to do.
I reportedly goes on to talk about, you know, feeling like he was thrown under the bus by Holly Willoughby, saying that, you know, it feels as though he was sacked because actually his brother was found to have been a paedophile, etc., all of that stuff. But does anyone actually really feel sorry for him? Live from Los Angeles is PR guru, CEO of Go Up, Edward Curran-James. Edward, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Does anyone actually feel sorry for Schofield's pity card here?
Well, if they don't, they should. I think it's very, very easy from the position of someone watching television to forget that these are human beings, and quite often quite fragile human beings at that. But what Schofield has been through in the last year is, by all accounts, probably one of the worst things mentally that a human being can put another human being through. The level of media assassination has been absolutely extraordinary. And if you're a human being, and everywhere you look, you are seeing tens of thousands of negative, beyond negative, press pieces, media interviews, social media posts about you. It pushes people to the absolute brink.
Yeah, but Edward, can I just push in there? He's made millions off being in the public eye. He's made millions of opening himself up to being in people's living rooms every single day. And he's done very, very well out of it. And unfortunately for Philip Schofield, there are consequences to that if it all goes wrong. It means that the blow-up is very public. And I'm afraid that's what you get if you behave in the way he did, no?
No, that's not what you get. That's what you get in a broken society, if people behave in a particular way that you don't approve of. Again, not to go back to his talking cards, and I have no personal interest in Phil Schofield whatsoever, but the thing that we have found extraordinary within our community of crisis managers is we're very much scratching our heads and looking for what it is that people think that he did wrong.
Well, we know what people think he did wrong. Come on.
Well, no, we know the worst of people's imaginations about what happened. But we also know that it was a consensual affair between two consenting adults. We know that there's a big age difference. Well, guess what? That's very common. Winston Churchill was having an affair with someone 30 years younger than him. I've been looking at some stats right now. You know, 17 years difference between George Clooney and Amal Clooney. 30 years difference between Rufus Sewell and his wife. 26 years between Leonardo DiCaprio and his girlfriend. So
yeah, when did Leonardo DiCaprio meet his girlfriend, though? You know?
Yes, but you're making a massive inference there that there was something nefarious about that meeting. You're letting your imagination run wild, when actually you have no idea about the circumstances of what happened in between the period when they met and when they had the affair. It may well be, of course, that there's something nefarious that went on, but it also could be completely harmless. And there has been no allegation that it was anything other than harmless. No victim has stood up and said, I'm a victim here, there was predatory behavior. There was a very thorough inquiry by a very senior KC that looked for predatory behavior and didn't find any. There's no pattern of behavior. There are no other alleged victims coming out of the woodwork saying he has done this to me, he's done this to me. And so we have made a massive assumption about a society, and as a society, and that assumption has led to the absolute destruction of a man. And either we believe in the presumption of innocence or we don't. And I think that's something that as a society we need to really think long and hard about. Is it mob justice or is there actual justice? Because this isn't justice.
All right, OK. Edward, look, fantastic. So can I also compliment you on probably the best background that I have seen in years of working at GB News. Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much. There's Edward Coram-Jones there, who's the CEO of Go Up. He's a PR guru, crisis manager. To be fair, I think, you know, we can all disagree maybe with what he's had to say there about Philip Schofield, but I think if we were all in a personal crisis, he'd probably go to that guy because he could put your side of it up quite well, couldn't he? But anyway, with the Middle East on the brink of all-out war, is Keir Starmer the right man to steer Britain through this crisis? I'm going to tackle that. I'm also crucially going to be taking to task the question of whether or not we have allowed sleeper cells from the likes of Iran and Hezbollah here into the UK and what that means for us now, because apparently they are being instructed to actually go on the offensive. So are we now less safe because of decisions we've made at the border? Stay tuned.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Drier for many of us over the next 24 hours. Clearest in the north, but elsewhere there will be still some cloud and some showers, especially across eastern and southeastern parts of England, as the area of low pressure responsible for all the rain of the last few days slowly pulls away. As it pulls away, we've got this cold wind coming in from the North Sea to affect eastern parts of England. A lot of low cloud for the north and east of England, as well as the Midlands, parts of East Wales, and with that low cloud, some showery, drizzly rain at times. But in the far west, and certainly across Scotland and Northern Ireland, we've got clear skies and a chilly start to Wednesday, but that's where the best of the sunshine will be. Northern Ireland, much as Scotland, blue skies from the word go, and having seen a few showers in the northeast of Scotland during Tuesday, it's a drier spell on Wednesday and Thursday here with mostly just sunny spells. And Western Scotland, barely a cloud in sight first thing, one or two mist patches for Northern Ireland, otherwise largely fine. However, as we get into England and Wales, here we've got more extensive cloud cover, and the rain that we started the week with, well, that's turned to showers. Nevertheless, through the Wash, parts of Norfolk, Suffolk, perhaps Kent, we'll see quite a number of showers continuing through the day, along with a brisk northeast breeze and a lot of cloud. That's going to make it feel considerably cooler than elsewhere across the UK. So low to mid-teens on the east coast, where we've got some sunny spells elsewhere, 15 to 17 Celsius. We start Thursday with widespread clear skies. Still one or two showers through the day across the far southeast, but otherwise, for many, it's simply a sunny day. Best day of the week widely across the UK, and feeling pleasant enough in that sunshine with light winds as well. Friday starts off on a similar note, but there will be some rain in the far west later and an unsettled weekend to come.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
But also at home, we need to take note of what is happening. Over the last 24 hours, Hezbollah have said that they are now considering launching international terror cells around the world to harm friends of Israel.
Are Iranian sleeper cells in Britain preparing to attack us on the streets?
Make no mistake, Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people.
Well, Keir Starmer's Labour Party is totally split on Israel, and our multicultural society is split as well. Are we in real trouble? Also tonight.
Our continued membership of the European Convention on Human Rights is making it impossible for us to deport terrorists who are here walking our streets, to remove dangerous foreign criminals like rapists and murderers and paedophiles who we need to get out of our country to protect the public.
Well, after Robert Jenrick said that we couldn't deport terrorists, well, it turns out that we can't lock them up either, because the man who radicalised the Manchester Arena bomber is going to be released. I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages tonight with my wonderful panel, columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, the director for the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and the journalist Jonathan Liss. Oh, and what do you think that the peace-loving people of Gaza are celebrating here? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Is a terrorist Trojan horse about to attack us here in Britain? Next.
Good evening. The top stories at 1 minute past 10. The Prime Minister says Iran has menaced the Middle East for far too long as he condemns this evening's missile attack on Israel. Sir Keir Starmer said he was deeply concerned that the region is on the brink and for the risk of miscalculation. Downing Street's confirmed he's spoken to France's President Macron and Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz. All three leaders condemn Iran's attack. In a televised address tonight, the Prime Minister publicly supported Israel's right to self-defence.
Make no mistake. Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people.
In other news, Conservative leadership hopefuls Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly have hit out at Nigel Farage's Reform UK party. Mr Jenrick has suggested the party's popularity is down to Tory failure and broken promises, and James Cleverly ruled out a deal with Farage to win back voters. The candidates were speaking on stage at the Conservative Party conference this afternoon in Birmingham.
I think it's a symptom, not a cause. It exists in its current state because we failed. And by that I don't mean you, the members of the party, I mean we in Westminster.
We need to demonstrate that we are a proper Conservative party, because reform is a pale imitation of us. We don't need to be a pale imitation of them.
A 14-year-old girl has been left with potentially life-changing injuries after a suspected acid attack outside a school in West London. A boy aged 16 and a 27-year-old woman were also injured after the substance, which is believed to be acidic, was thrown at the victims outside Westminster Academy yesterday afternoon. Police believe the teenagers were approached by a lone suspect who was on an e-scooter with a member of staff left injured after she rushed to help. The suspect is described as a tall, slim, black male wearing dark clothing with his face obscured, possibly by a mask or balaclava. Theatres across the country dimmed their lights earlier this evening to honour the legacy of Dame Maggie Smith, who died on Friday at the age of 89. The star of screen and stage had multiple Olivier Award wins, having appeared in the National Theatre's debut season in 1963. On screen, she was perhaps best known for her roles in the Harry Potter film series and the Downton Abbey TV series. And Buckingham Palace has announced Her Royal Highness Princess Beatrice and her husband, Edoardo Mapelli-Mozzi, are expecting their second child together. Due in the early spring, the new arrival will be a sibling for the couple's daughter, Sienna, and the princess's stepson, Wolfie. The king has been informed, and both families are delighted with the news. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Is the conflict in the Middle East about to play out on the streets of Britain? Iran has bombarded Israel with hundreds of missiles. Well, as you can see, it looks as though many did pierce the Iron Dome. We've not seen anything like this, really, for decades. Israel will surely strike back, and then what happens? But as I sit here in Britain, my main concern is how this affects us. Now, intelligence agencies believe that Iran has organised and funded sleeper terror cells across Europe, including the UK, and could greenlight attacks in response to a conflict in the Gulf. The cells are operated by radicals linked to Hezbollah, the Lebanese militant group. Counter-terror police disrupted a cell in 2015 that was caught stockpiling tons of explosive materials at businesses on the outskirts of London. A source told The Telegraph Iran has Hezbollah operatives in position to carry out a terrorist attack in the event of a conflict. Well, whose side of this conflict will many people in Britain be on? We've seen things like this on the streets every other week for months. The pro-Palestine brigade run amok. We've got a serving MP, a former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, who was present at a wreath-laying ceremony for the Munich terrorists. David Lammy has already rowed back on arms sales to Israel.
There are certain UK arms exports to Israel. There does exist a clear risk that they might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law.
Well, and our current Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has a Labour Party that's completely split over Israel. I mean, the threat to Britain is absolutely massive, and we've never had a government or a society so divided when it comes to issues of the Middle East. Well, I'm joined now by political commentator and broadcaster Maya Tousi. Maya, thank you very, very much. And the reason I wanted to bring you on is because you have some experience of Iranian sleeper cells and bad actors acting on the streets of Britain. How worried should we be about an attack here?
Well, the ordinary people in this country should be worried. What the Iranian regime have been doing for the past few decades is they've planted their people, and they're on different levels. So you actually have some of them publicly. The sons and daughters of the IRGC leaders are living in luxury in places like Chelsea and Kensington. They go to nightclubs, they do drugs and alcohol, they do whatever they want while their parents are oppressing the people in the country. And there have been some people in the past, the analysts have said, well, that might have been MI5's tactic to keep them close here, to keep an eye on them. But that's just one layer. You actually have the rest of them who are not necessarily Iranian, but they are the proxies. So there could be, for example, Hezbollah members. They are all not currently activated. And these people would be activated if the Islamic Republic of Iran is about to fall. And the other problem is that there's a third layer, which is basically the rest of the brainwashed Islamists, who some of them would join the pro-Palestinian protests. And these are the people who would cause trouble, but the good thing about the Islamist side is that they're going to say, oh, it's just a lone wolf. It's just an isolated incident. They're not going to take responsibility.
So what would that look like then? Do you think that we could seriously now be on the brink of, not just here in Britain, by the way, but I would imagine right across Western Europe, Iran being able to activate sleeper cells?
Yes, I mean, we haven't really taken seriously threats from others, including the Chinese Communist Party, that have had secret police stations in Manhattan, in London and other places. The Iranian regime as well, and they have their own versions of these sort of entities. And the Canadian government, the British government, the US Democrats, for example, they've been funding these Islamists. They've been giving them money. They've been actually cooperating behind closed doors because the strategy is always to de-escalate. They didn't really think about the consequences. We can actually have problems. For example, myself, a lot of people would know if they watch my channel that I've been targeted outside where I live by people who are linked to the embassy. Of course, the authorities help keep me safe. We had another British Iranian journalist who was also stabbed in London a few months ago. These things will happen on a regular basis, and it's not really just about those with links to Iran, but it will be other people as well.
Yeah, the threat would be any country that supports Israel in what it's doing in any way, shape or form can get it, as far as they are concerned. Mayor, look, thank you very, very much for coming on tonight. Great to have you right at the top of the 10 o'clock. It's Mayor Tusi there, political commentator, broadcaster. Also, make sure you do check him out on YouTube. Now, GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White, is back with us. Mark, look, thank you very much. You know, we've been talking a bit there about the threat of those sleeper cells on the streets of Britain. I mean, it is a massive concern. I mean, how stretched are our intelligence services when it comes to that kind of thing?
Well, they're working flat out. Of course, they have an Islamist problem, a very significant Islamist problem that they're dealing with in this country anyway. And that was long before the situation in Gaza arose, which added a new dimension to that. Remember, in October of last year, we saw a pensioner murdered, stabbed to death, and 2 others injured by an asylum seeker up in Hartlepool. He was later convicted, sentenced to life in prison. That attack was revenge for Gaza. We've seen other attacks in Germany and in France in recent months, again linked to Gaza. So every possibility, the security services are working on the potential for there to be a reaction to what is happening in southern Lebanon and Iran's involvement there now. The terror threat level in the UK at the moment remains at moderate, meaning an attack is likely. That's at the kind of median point. There's no indication that will rise, but clearly as the situation on the ground in the Middle East changes day by day, there's every possibility that we could see the terror threat level here in the UK rise at some point as well.
Well, look, let's just say, as pictures now, for anyone who's watching us on television, you know, are showing that attack earlier, launched by Iran, hundreds of missiles, some of them appearing to get through. What next, Mark? You know, the world has been holding its breath here. Israel's presumably going to hit back at some point. What's that going to look like?
Well, interestingly, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said this evening that Iran has made a big mistake and will pay the price. Vice Admiral, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, who is the military spokesman in Israel, also saying that response from Israel would be at a time and of a manner of Israel's choosing. So we await to see what that response will be. Iran has said that it is ready for whatever the retaliation is from Israel. And clearly, if Israel do launch a significant attack on the regime in Tehran, then there is real potential for this to escalate even further. The hope is that it won't. Keir Starmer, of course, the UK Prime Minister, saying tonight that he stands firmly behind Israel, but not giving us any indication, Patrick, as to whether UK military personnel were involved in defending Israel tonight.
Look, Mark, thank you very much, not just for this, but for everything you've been doing for us over the course of the day. It's Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor. 2 main points for me now that I'm going to put to my panel. I'm going to be talking about this threat of Iranian-backed terror sleeper cells, but also whether or not Sir Keir Starmer actually can deal with this. Can he even deal with his own party when it comes to this issue? Stephen, I'll start with you. You know, Keir Starmer has got a divided party on this. They had to lean on allegations he denies. Lindsay Hoyle over a Gaza ceasefire vote. David Lammy's just withdrawn some arms sales to Israel. Now he's standing up saying, I support Israel full scale. I mean, he can't even control his own backbenchers on this. If it kicks off, we're in trouble, aren't we?
I'm going to say something that you think will surprise you from my view about Keir Starmer. And I'll say it because I think Keir Starmer is a managerialist. I think he's part of the view that is pretty much elitist and establishmentarian. And I suspect he will do exactly what he's told about Israel, give it full support, because that's what the Americans expect you to do. And that's what he will do. And I think he will carry on doing that, just as Tony Blair did.
But can the Foreign Secretary do that, though?
Well, that's the point. And this is where I think I think Keir Starmer will probably see this as an opportunity for himself. Just as Tony Blair did, that if people start stepping out of line on the Israeli issue, he can put the foot down and get rid of them or move them away. And he's still got enough power at the moment, because he's so new in the job, that a lot of people are still trying to find their feet. So I suspect he will be in power and he can segment his own rule here very strongly. He will not veer from supporting Israel, and he won't allow others to try and step in. Others will try, but I think he will have an opportunity to do otherwise.
I mean, I think that's an interesting take, considering his biggest challenge, if your theory is correct, would be David Lammy. Because I do think that he kind of just have a different opinion from Keir Starmer and kind of this unquestionable support for Israel. I mean, that sort of 30 arms embargo fiasco, it was basically a symbolic gesture, because it doesn't really mean much. He sort of embargo on like 30 irrelevant parts of different equipment. I do think, though, the bigger question here is not necessarily on Keir Starmer and his ability to manage his party in this, but it's really David Lammy. Does David Lammy inspire confidence in this kind of precarious time in the world? And my answer to that is no, because I think he's way out of his depth. I think that sort of symbolic act of the arms embargo, I mean, you either sell them the arms or you don't, right? But when you do that, when you straddle the fence, when you seem more concerned with gesture politics and with sort of identity politics, going to the UN and talking about how you're a black man being there, I'm like, okay, have you ever heard of Kofi Annan? Like, what are you talking about? Like, why is this relevant, right? And I remember watching this being like, it was like a badge of honor as a Ghanaian. It was like, oh, Kofi Annan, UN Secretary General, you know, Ghanaian and all of that. And then you have this man who's got to a very high office in British politics, and that's his kind of claim to fame.
The idea will be this, Jonathan, that you know, we're about to see one of the greatest foreign policy crises that we have ever seen, and now in charge of that we have an appalling foreign secretary.
Oh, you're such a troll.
Patrick, I kind of feel like it's Groundhog Day. I do not understand the absolute obsession with David Lammy. It is completely baffling.
Well, he's the foreign secretary.
Yeah, I do not understand. We've had a conversation about whether David Lammy is out of his depth 3 times. My goodness, this completely.
Because one time he turned up with trainers to see.
I feel like we've.
Another time he's, you know, there's also.
This is completely ludicrous. There's nothing wrong with David Lammy. You might disagree with his politics. Doesn't mean he's out of his depth in the job. Liz Truss was out of her depth in the job. Dominic Raab was out of his depth in the job.
If his politics on this are squiffy on Israel,
they're not. I don't know what that means, Patrick.
At Israel, then that could be a bit of an issue.
It's completely ludicrous.
Do you think he's fully square? Jonathan, do you think David is fully squarely behind Israel in the whole, or do you think he might have slightly different views?
I don't actually care what is going on inside David Lammy's head, because what David Lammy did on that limited arms embargo, and I think he should have gone further, was that he was literally following through the recommendations of a report that David Cameron had actually commissioned, I believe, about whether British exports were guaranteed not to be involved in war crimes, because that would implicate Britain. That's completely legitimate for a British government to do.
All right, OK, fine. Be interesting to see how Israel feels about this, because, you know, Iran clearly don't feel the consequences, do they? Joe Biden, allegedly still in charge.
Well, I don't think we're supplying exports.
Well, I mean,
exporting arms to Iran, Patrick.
What day of the week it is.
Exporting arms to Iran.
A Labour government here.
But I don't think Biden's been in charge for a long time.
It's a problem, yeah, quite. Let me just, we've got a couple of minutes left on this. Just want to touch on what we were hearing from Mayor Toosey there, as well as just to resurrect a report that was in the Telegraph a couple of years ago about MI5 actually getting hold of a sleeper cell here that was trying to plot explosives on the outskirts of London. They were related to Hezbollah. So this notion that we have got sleeper cells here in this country that could pose a massive problem could be activated at a time like this if Iran suffers. Are you concerned about that?
Well, I think if the idea that there are sleeper cells is not something that I would generally have thought is something Iran can do, but if MI5 are saying it's there and they've got evidence to do so, then we should be concerned about it. I know what's happened to Maya. I've seen that in particularly. I watched the issue with him, and I know particularly that's of concern, not just to him, but other activists who oppose Iran. And that's something that's deeply concerning, because I go back to the point of Esther. It's individuals that can just step out, and they're the ones who are likely to.
And they're the biggest threat as well, because you can monitor sleeper cells. You can follow them around. You can see what they're planning. You can intercept communication and all of that. You can't do that for a madman that wakes up one day, takes a knife from his kitchen, and goes to stab an old man running at 5 a.m.
I'm slightly worried about MI5 because they've got a track record sometimes of failure. on this.
Well, yes, I mean, there's always that risk.
Attacks in London.
Yeah.
They actually actively supported the person that caused the attacks in Manchester by bringing them over and doing nothing about it.
Yeah.
So, they've got blood on their hands, and they either have to step up on their game to make sure it doesn't happen again. I'd like to make sure that I have confidence in them. But after Manchester, I still don't.
Well, there's also the risk. But there's also the element.
They actively supported bringing in the person.
Well, hold on. They were charged with the nation's security, but there's also the risk of political correctness actually impeding their efficacy. We know that 1 in 5 people convicted of terrorist offences since 1998 have been of an asylum background. That's not insignificant. That's 20%. And yet, if you mention the risk of people coming over with asylum backgrounds that have a higher than average level of extremism, you're sort of maligned as saying, oh, but you don't want to bring in, poor refugees from other parts of the world. But what we are saying is actually young males that are refugees are a bigger threat than, let's say, women and children, which I think should be favoured.
It would be a concern,
personally.
especially if we look at issues that are taking place in another part of the world. It would be a concern as to whether or not we had imported people who happen to support people that we weren't in that conflict. Of course it would be. But look, coming up, I'll bring you the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. My panel will be back for that. But first, we alluded a bit to this, actually. So the Islamist terrorist accused of radicalising the Manchester Arena bomber, Salman Abedi, is going to be released within weeks. That's despite the parole board branding him high risk to the public, concluding that he could radicalise others as well. Look, should we be locking this guy away for life? What's going on? I'm going to be joined by the former extremist turned extremism prevention educator, Sahel Ahmed. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday, we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You could, if you're getting a bit bored later on and you've got some free time, tune in to Friends. Do you remember that?
It's on somewhere in the world all the time.
Probably one of those
incredible.
Obscure TV channels.
It's a big anniversary today, because apparently today was 30 years ago, was when it first hit the screens.
In 1994. Just before, or just after I was born, 89 me. The show ran for 10 series, becoming one of the most popular sitcoms of all time, and it scored numerous accolades, including 62 Primetime Emmy nominations. Joining us now in the studio to talk everything Friends and the big anniversary is showbiz reporter Steph Tetchy and my friend as well.
Happy Friends anniversary, guys. Yes, today is quite a monumental day for one of the most incredible sitcoms to ever hit our TV screens.
That it's on somewhere in the world.
There's millions of people around the world who are watching reruns, watching either streaming of Friends, and it doesn't get boring for people. I think, 30 years later, just that it's such a simple concept. 6 New Yorkers just following their lives and their friendships. It proved a hit with loads of viewers worldwide.
The casting was superb.
It was so incredible. And the thing is, these were all fresh faces at the time. It wasn't like they picked people who were at the top of the game then. And I think it was such a hit with viewers is because they became our friends as well over the years. But obviously today is played with a bit of poignancy because, there is one friend that is missing. And the creators of the show, Martha Kaufman and David Crane, saying that today is a bit fraught for both the cast because of Matthew Perry's passing, and he was known as one of the funniest friends, as most people would describe him as, and so today is kind of marred with sadness.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Yeah, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, very shortly, I'll have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you. But first, stark warnings tonight about the public safety after it emerged today that a convicted Islamist terrorist who was instrumental in radicalising the Manchester Arena bomber Salman Abedi will be released from jail in just a few weeks. Islamic State extremist Abdal Rauf Abdallah has been serving a 9.5-year jail sentence for masterminding an ISIS recruitment network from his family home in Manchester. The official investigation into the Manchester Arena attack found that Abdul Rauf had a significant influence on the bomber, Abedi, with the two exchanging more than 1,000 text messages. Abedi went on to kill 22 people and injure 1,000 more when he detonated a bomb at the end of an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester back in 2017. But because Abdal Rauf will be at the end of his full sentence in November, officials are now powerless to stop his release. That's despite the parole board, who, let's be honest, sometimes it's quite easy to pull the wool over the parole board's eyes, but the parole board rejected his bid for early release, concluding that he still actually posed a high risk to the public, that he continued to pose a risk of radicalising others. Joining me now is Sohail Ahmed, who's a former Islamist and extremist and is now an extremism prevention educator. You've been on a journey yourself, my good man, so great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. This person now, we're letting him out because of the end of his sentence. Is he still definitively, for you, going to be a risk, do you think?
Absolutely, I have no doubt about that whatsoever. I've come across, so having been an Islamist, I've come across people like that before. These sorts of people they mastermind the stuff that happens, whether it's sending people to Syria or providing them weapons, and they're very difficult to de-radicalise. It's almost impossible, if not impossible, to de-radicalise that type of Islamist.
Why?
It's because they're so deep into the ideology. They're not the ones that are being groomed. They're the ones doing the grooming. So they really believe in the ideology, and given the religious dimension to it, it becomes something that is fervently believed.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're ultimately, in their views, I suppose, only accountable to something, you know, much greater than anything that we could have here, very difficult to get that out of someone's head. Do you think they're exploiting our liberal values in order to get out?
They absolutely are. They're exploiting our values, our openness, freedom of speech, equality before the law, human rights. They exploit all of those, despite despising them, despite hating those values and the liberal West. They hypocritically use those values to further advance their ideology, which in the end means bringing the downfall of the West, bringing the downfall of Britain. So essentially, we've kind of... They hijack our society to destroy our society.
And how many more people like this guy do you think there are out there? Is the problem much bigger than we realise?
Far bigger, in fact. In fact, the official statistics refer to a subset of terror sympathisers and terror actively involved people. But the actual real number is far larger, far, far larger.
So, presumably he will have had to have gone through... Well, I mean, I'm saying this, I don't know for sure, but they will have attempted to have done some kind of de-radicalisation scheme with him. Can I ask, do you have any idea what that kind of thing looks like? I know that you've been on your own journey yourself. Was there any of that for you? What happens there?
For me, there was no de-radicalisation programme. I self-de-radicalised. But in terms of the de-radicalisation programmes, they do work quite softly, and it's kind of one-on-one support. And it's very much about exploring ideas and challenging them. But most of these people won't change their minds.
They won't change their mind. And that's the key line, because 22 people died here. That was a concert at Manchester that was full of a lot of, like, young girls as well, the nature of that concert, you know, an Ariana Grande concert. that kind of person there, you know, who decided to attack them and also just scar both mentally and physically about 1,000 more people, well, probably more than 1,000 people. The victims there and their families have seen this guy who supposedly radicalised the bomber do 9.5 years, and now he's back out. I mean, this is an insult to the people who've had to suffer already, isn't it?
It's absolutely reprehensible that he's being released. It's an insult to the memory of those who died. It's an insult to everyone who's affected. I've appeared on panels alongside victims of the Manchester Arena attack. I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf, but I'd imagine they'd be infuriated. And it's it's showing our weakness somewhat in that we're so liberal that we're almost allowing ourselves to be harmed.
And just finally and quickly on this then, look, is the only answer to lock people like this away forever, do you think?
I think that when sentencing, there should be a clause that allows for, if there's still a risk, then indefinite imprisonment. And not only that, they need to be sequestered from the general prison population. The reason why I say that is because His Majesty's prisons are one of the largest breeding grounds of radicalization, Islamist radicalization. What happens is that the Islamists form gangs, and then both non-Muslims and Muslims join that gang for protection. And what happens when you're surrounded by a certain type of people? You're more susceptible to believing them.
Look, thank you very much. No, absolutely fascinating stuff. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I hope to talk to you again very, very soon. So thank you. That's Sahel Ahmed there, former Islamist, now an extremism prevention educator. Coming up, yes, it's the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. They've landed. There is one story dominating, as I'm sure you will expect. It's Iran's missile strike on Israel. Are we on the cusp of World War III? Also, do you trust this Labour government to protect Britain? I am also going to be playing you a little clip from Kemi Badenoch, who appears to suggest that between 5 and 10% of civil servants should be in prison. Find out why next.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's becoming drier from the west, but it's taking a time with still a lot of cloud across the UK and some showery rain. That rain, well, it's causing some issues across the east of England, and it will continue into the evening as the area of low pressure that's been with us for some days slowly pulls away. So some wet weather to come for East Anglia and the southeast overnight. Otherwise, the rain in the east tends to turn lighter and more showery as the night progresses, but we keep a lot of cloud for much of England and Wales. The clearest skies overnight will be for Scotland and Northern Ireland. 1 or 2 showers. Otherwise, under those clear skies, temperatures falling into the mid or even low single figures in some sheltered spots. That's where we've got the brightest weather to start off Wednesday. Northern Ireland and Scotland, plenty of blue skies. Quite a difference from much of central, eastern and southern England, where there's a lot of low cloud, some mist and murk and some drizzle. Likewise for central and eastern Wales, but West Wales we'll see much brighter skies. Northern England turning brighter through the morning. Scotland and Northern Ireland, meanwhile, apart from 1 or 2 showers in the east, we'll see plenty of sunny skies. And we keep the sunshine across western Scotland and Northern Ireland throughout Wednesday. That's the place to be for widespread blue skies. And actually, it's looking brighter for Northern England and North Wales. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud cover. And we've got these showers continuing to roll into East Anglia, the East Midlands, and the southeast through the day. So that's going to make it feel a little less pleasant, and a brisk wind from the east as well will hold temperatures back in the mid-teens. But elsewhere, feeling warm enough in any sunny spells. Then going into the evening, the clear skies in the north will progress southwards, and so a chilly start for many of us on Thursday, but actually plenty of fine weather through the day, sunny spells and feeling pleasant. But into the weekend, more rain to come.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. It's time now for the first look at your front pages. So we start with the Metro. I'm sure you can all guess the theme here, but Iran's new blitz on Israel, revenge attack over raids on Lebanon. The Telegraph goes, Iran attacks Israel. Very dramatic picture there on the front of the Telegraph of those missiles, well, you know, raining down from the sky, really. The US has vowed there'll be consequences. It ties in, doesn't it, with the idea that there are going to be follow-up actions. Interesting. Letby witness changes mind on baby's death. A key medical witness in the Lucy Letby trial has said he's changed his mind about how one of the babies was killed. All right. Let's go to The Independent. Again, Israel invades, Iran retaliates. The world looks on in horror. The Eye, Iran missile attack on Israel sparks fears of new war. There's also a story at the top there. Tory centrists launched their Stop Generic campaign. So there we are. Let's go to The Guardian. Israel vows to retaliate again after Iran launches missile attack. So look, those are all of your front pages. We have covered at length so far the situations abroad, but also what that could mean for us domestically here. But I wanted to bring this to your attention, because you might have missed this. Speaking at a Spectator magazine event this evening, Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch has made some eyebrow-raising remarks about our civil service. Have a little listen.
It is not all civil servants. I don't want people to get me wrong. There's about 5 to 10% of them who are very, very bad. You know, should be in prison bad. Leaking official secrets, undermining their ministers, telling, agitating. I had some of it in my department, usually union-led. But most of them actually want to do a good job, and the good ones are very frustrated by the bad ones.
So, has she got a point? Should civil servants who leak things, whether it's government secrets or just anything really, be sent to prison?
I don't know if I would put someone in prison for that. I mean, obviously there are degrees of this. It depends on the significance of the national secrets. But can you imagine being in prison by someone who murdered someone? Like, what are you in for? Leaked a secret. Like I leaked the minutes of a meeting. Exactly.
Yeah.
I leaked Boris having a sandwich during lockdown, or something like that. I mean, I think that's.
Well, they went to prison for Facebook and Twitter.
Well, exactly. So I think that's a bit excessive.
Be a little new channel.
I think that's excessive. However, I do think there should be targets for civil servants. I do think there should be consequences for if you're a civil servant that performs badly. I have friends who work in the civil service, and really, you couldn't run a private company the way that a lot of government agencies are run. There are no sort of very limited KPIs. It's very difficult to actually get fired. Of course, getting the best out of people that work for a lot of government agencies is very, very difficult.
Yeah, because you don't have to, because they don't have to. There is zero pressure. There is simply not the same degree of pressure that you have in a private company, where you have to survive on a day-to-day basis. You don't get that in the civil service. What do you think, Stevie? Whether she was being entirely serious about actually physically dragging people to prison, I'm not quite sure. I can't work that out. But she's making a point, isn't she? That there's a good number of civil servants who clearly just want to leak and destroy.
I think she was attempting to try and make a joke by saying, with the offhand, they should be in prison. But there is a realistic element to it. All the senior civil servants who are in those roles have to sign the Official Secrets Act. I'm aware of that because I, at one stage in my life, had to sign that exactly myself. So if they are leaking information, the question is whether it falls within the Official Secrets Act. And, of course, if they do so, that it can be an imprisonable offence. And that, in my view, if they leak certain information, perhaps they should go to prison. The most likely thing is that, really, we should have had a change to the employment contracts, if it's not already there, that if they are caught leaking, they should lose their jobs. And not only that, more importantly to me, I'd like to see them lose their pensions, because that is the biggest cost for senior civil servants to our country, unfunded pensions by those at the top.
Should people be sacked for leaking?
I mean, look, if that was the case, then half half of the ministers in any government, more than half, would have been sacked or in Badenoch's case, sent to prison themselves. I wonder, Patrick, what the penalty should be for computer hacking, by the way. Say, for example, in Harriet Harman, because Kemi Badenoch actually confessed to that crime and that was sort of like dismissed as a kind of a joke before she got into Parliament. So perhaps a journalist might like to ask her about whether all kinds of crimes should be subject to penalty or just the ones that she doesn't like.
Most crimes are subject to prison.
Kemi Badenoch admitted to a crime and nothing was done about it. It was just dismissed as a joke.
I'm not, by the way, I'm not trying to pour a bucket of proverbial over what you said, but I think at this point I do have to say Kemi Badenoch is not here to defend herself against allegations of
she admits it.
Committed crime. Yeah, fine, but I have to say she's not here to defend herself against that. So now that's been said.
Even if she did go to prison, they'd be out in a few weeks anyway.
Well, maybe she was under coercion. She could argue.
The point is, the serious point here, Patrick, is that Kemi Badenoch is a loose cannon. I cannot think of another politician who has sabotaged themselves more progressively with every single statement. Liz Truss, everyone always knew that she was mad, right? But so that's the thing. When Liz Truss opens her mouth, no one's surprised because you expect what comes out of it to be garbage. But with Badenoch, there was an idea in the left that she was actually rather repellent in every way, but she was actually quite sensible and smart.
How can you be repellent and sensible?
Look, she's a loose cannon.
I'm not okay.
I'm not sure she's a loose.
I wonder with Kemi whether or not the difficulty that she's got is that she says certain things that make it easy for people to make a massive deal over that.
I think
so the maternity pay thing, and which she didn't actually really say, but she allowed herself to be drawn in that situation. The cultures being valid than others thing, that thing there about prison. Well, I listen to it and I see it maybe with slightly different eyes in the job I'm in now, and I don't really think that there's much wrong with
I think there's a slight issue, not slight. There's an issue of a lack of polish. I think. Actually, being a politician, you have to be very, very, very good at language. You have to speak in complete sentences, and you have to be aware of all the tricks that exist in media. No, seriously. So the maternity pay one, when you look at it in its entirety, you think, oh, she's talking about its regulation on businesses, right? Because I was thinking, hold on, you're a woman, you're a mother. Like, why would you want to make mothers' lives more difficult? And then when you look into it more in depth, you realise that's kind of the stitch up.
But that does on the other side.
That being said, I'm not saying this to excuse it. I'm saying it to say that says something about the quality of a politician she is. And I make the same case against Suella Braverman as well, because I said she was very shoddy, she was very unpolished, and she made statements that I just think, how did you get past any selection?
They're very worst enemies because it makes it so easy for people to attack them.
We want them to be speaking normally at a level that the public understand and say the things that really matter to them. That's the kind of openness that we have. What they have to be careful about is how those who are their opponents manipulate that.
I reject that. You can be open. Hold on. I reject that because you can be open, you can speak, you can be very down to earth, but you can also be very precise with your language.
Exactly.
And that's something that, I mean, journalists and people that work in our industry have to be very good at that. People that do front-facing, people like us, for example. However, I think things that we say, for example, it's a lot harder to be taken out of context because we have that kind of practice and skill. And a politician has to have that.
I wonder if there's a sense, Jonathan, that if Kemi Badenoch, she may well go on to be their Tory leader. She may well go on to be a good Tory leader. We don't know. But there's a sense that if she is Tory leader, you're going to end up seeing a heck of a lot of headlines and follow-up clean-up operations about stuff she said, which is not necessarily what the Tories want or need.
She is a complete loose cannon. And she's got this really bad habit, Patrick, of saying stuff, then gets challenged by journalists and then kind of accused the journalist of bad faith for simply repeating her words back to her. It's happened many times. It has happened many times. She's saying, I didn't say that, you're kind of like, you're
a lot of the time
they can do
because she's quoting her.
Some journalists try to think that they're being overly clever by
quoting her words.
Take that out of context, where we've just seen her there about sending them to prison. To me, it's clear that she's attempting to make a joke. But a journalist would turn around and say, you're not making a joke, you want to send them off to
a journalist would... No, that's not the point.
The onus shouldn't be on the journalist. This is why I said the skill of the politician matters. If I was a politician and you're trying to stitch me up as a journalist, you have to be skillful enough as a politician to turn it back on them. Not to say you're trying to stitch me up, but I'm like, what do you mean?
Or what do you... You have to take responsibility for the words you say. We all have to take responsibility for the words we say on this programme.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. All right, sometimes I wish we didn't, but there we go. Right, look, coming up, Labour have got a bit of a battle on their hands when it comes to the unions, yes, because now they're going to make thousands of people unemployed. So places like Port Talbot, places like Aberdeen, for example, that's going to be a big problem for them. So how are they going to deal with that? I'm going to be dealing with Labour's union problem, crucially an Ed Miliband problem as well, very soon.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
So I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm going to see your show, Behind the Shoulder Pads, one night only at the Adelphi Theatre, October the 22nd. You're talking about your extraordinary life. Stage, screen, published author, 19
TV,
books, TV, most important.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who's managed to straddle, 7, 8 decades in showbiz and still be at the top?
Yes, I was thinking about that the other day because somebody said, you know, the last is good. There is a Shirley MacLaine.
Sure.
She started the same time as me.
Right.
Sophia Loren.
Yeah.
She started around the same time.
She's not working much, though.
It's true, she's not, but she's still out there being, you know, a major icon. And of course, people like Dick Van Dyke, who's just almost 100.
Yeah, he's incredible,
you know,
isn't he?
I'm a mere babe next to him.
Yeah, you are. But and I was thinking about, you've written some extraordinary, wicked, waspish diaries, which of course you can because you've worked with so many people. Look at the names: Frank Sinatra, Lana Turner, Elizabeth Taylor, Dean Martin, Gregory Peck,
Richard Burton,
Paul Newman. The list goes on and on. And Gene Kelly, my favourite. Was he your favourite?
Yes.
Why?
Because I saw him in a movie when I was a little girl called For Me and My Gal with Judy Garland, and I just fell in love with him. It's such a cute movie. Well, they don't make movies like that anymore. And then I was lucky enough when I first went to Hollywood at age 20 to meet him and literally hang out with him and his friends. And then I put him in a movie with me that I produced. He played my husband in a movie called Sins. And he was wonderful. He was really wonderful.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Some more front pages for you now, just to round us off. So the Daily Mail. Middle East in flames. The Iron Dome holds firm against Iran's 200 missile blitz. Now Israel vows vengeance. Let's go to the Daily Express. US threatens severe response as Iran attacks Israel. You just wonder, don't you? Will the US go to war with Iran? There's a feeling, isn't there? There's actually been a long time coming. There's also a feeling that would be a very bad idea. But at the Times, Middle East erupts. They also carry the picture there of something that's possibly been slightly underreported tonight because of that blitz of missiles. There was a mass shooting in Tel Aviv earlier today. I believe that at least 8 people have been killed and several others injured. So, look, I'm actually going to talk about something that's been much closer to home because that story is leading everywhere. Today is the 1st of October. And as we head into the first start of the colder months, today is also the day that the energy price cap rose, resulting in higher energy bills for millions across the country. There are 2 people, though, who won't feel the effects of the energy price hike: our Prime Minister and our Chancellor. Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves only pay a taxable benefit on what it costs to run their Grace and Favour flats in Downing Street, a payment capped at 10% of their ministerial salaries. And the sum won't be impacted by the Ofgem increase today. This is all happening, of course, as pensioners across the country face a desperate winter without the winter fuel allowance to heat their own homes. Now, as you know, I am fundraising for the Friends of the Elderly to help the most vulnerable pensioners over the next few months. You can go to justgiving.com/page/Save Our Seniors. We've gone over £200,000 now, so thank you very much, everybody who's given whatever they can. There's a QR code on your screen as well. If you hold your phone over that, something magic happens and you can give a little bit of money. We're at £201,850. It's justgiving.com/page/Save Our Seniors. Stephen, do you think it's a disgrace that Starmer and co, they don't have to worry about their heating this winter, do they? But some old people, they do.
Of course they do. It's a double whammy on old people. It's a double whammy that we're going to see the increases in their electricity and gas bills, whilst also seeing the winter fuel allowance removed. It's a double whammy on those who are going to try and keep themselves alive this Christmas, when we know that there are reports that say thousands will die. A report from the government that's actually taking away these benefits. And at the end of the day, I can just turn around and say I think that's a disgrace. I think it's an utter disgrace.
Just quickly on this, Jonathan, do you think that there is a hypocrisy issue here? You know, one of Starmer's homes, and there are several now, quite nice and toasty. Meanwhile, you've got some pensioners who'll be freezing.
I don't know how many homes he's got. I thought he just had one other.
Well, in terms of got Downing Street, got Euston Chequers, he's got his Kentish Town one.
Right, okay, fine. I don't think it's a story that Starmer and Reeves have got the same system for paying for their utilities that every other Chancellor and Prime Minister have had. It's not something that they brought in to benefit themselves.
Yeah.
But obviously there's an issue about pensioners, and I would point out the very poorest pensioners are going to get their winter fuel allowance, and obviously people need to apply for pension credit if they're not taking it at the moment. But I oppose that policy, as I've said to you many times, and I think they should reverse it. OK,
justgiving.com/page/Save Our Seniors is that Just Giving page there. If you do have a few quid, that would be great. I am living off £15 food this week, by the way. I'm going to tell you about how that's going.
No wonder you look so trim.
Thank you very much. There we go. OK, right, now we're going to whiz ourselves onto Greatest Britain Union Jackass. So let's crack on with that. That's your Greatest Britain, please.
Kemi Badenoch, because it's been slim pickings this week. But I do agree with her on some of the culture comment. I think she actually did have a good sort of media hit with that BBC interview by saying not all cultures are valid, just because I thought the optics of that really worked in her favour. I think it sparked a very necessary conversation about actually, you know, the values that different cultures have and whether it's compatible with British culture.
All right, Stephen.
Well, I'm going for Pierre Poilievre, who is the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada, in a position now that he is trouncing Trudeau all across Canada, in a position where people believe that he is the best Conservative leader across the world. And in this week of the Conservative Party, who've been messing around trying to choose their leader, they should be looking over to Canada and seeing how he has increased the votes from 18 to 26-year-olds to 40%.
Yeah, getting the young people on board is crucial. Go on, who's your Greatest Britain?
Some surprise you here, Patrick. It's Liz Truss. Because no matter how bad things get with this Labour government, the moment that Truss opens her mouth, she reminds people how terrible the Conservatives were. So in the last couple of days, she's talked about the Tories going woke. That's what lost them the election. She's called for universities to be defunded if they don't support Conservative values, which is obviously a very pro-free speech comment.
Yep.
And then the highlight for me was talking about an underground transgender mafia that apparently cost her the election. She is absolutely crackers.
OK, all right. Well, three strong choices there. I think I'm going to go for Pierre. I'll make Pierre as the winner this time. I'm certainly leading the way at the moment, anyway, when it comes to Conservative leaders of places, of parties, I should say, around the world. Right, who's your Union Jackass, please?
Iran.
Yeah, good. OK.
You can't have a country. You can't have a country. I just do a different country every week. Come on, that's not fair.
Oh, I'm going very competitive about that. It's just a game. So, Stephen, who's yours?
I'm going for Phil Shiner, the lawyer who tried to take all our soldiers to court, who's been faced with a criminal case and bankruptcy and has been expelled.
Very quickly on that. He put forward false evidence?
Yes, in terms of false evidence, and arranged for people to give false evidence, accepting that whilst trying to get legal aid contract at the same time, so that he could then challenge all our soldiers militarily in saying that they've been committing crimes in Afghanistan. No, he lost the court case. He's become bankrupt, and they've expelled him as a solicitor.
I see. Right. OK. Fine. Jonathan, who's your union jackass, please?
Well, it's a very tough sort of pool, because it could have been generic. It could have been any of them, actually. I've gone with Badenoch, just because of the completely foul things she said. But in particular, there was a comment I just saw recently, which was sort of attacking migrant care workers and saying that we need to get other people to wipe our bottoms, and just talking in a very disparaging way about people who are coming here to do the work the British people won't do.
OK. All right, fantastic. So today's winner of the Union Jackass, I mean, it could be Iran, couldn't it, really? But
I mean... Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Drier for many of us over the next 24 hours. Clearest in the north, but elsewhere there will be still some cloud and some showers, especially across eastern and southeastern parts of England, as the area of low pressure responsible for all the rain of the last few days slowly pulls away. As it pulls away, we've got this cold wind coming in from the North Sea to affect eastern parts of England. A lot of low cloud for the north and east of England, as well as the Midlands, parts of East Wales, and with that low cloud, some showery, drizzly rain at times. But in the far west, and certainly across Scotland and Northern Ireland, we've got clear skies and a chilly start to Wednesday, but that's where the best of the sunshine will be. Northern Ireland, much as Scotland, blue skies from the word go, and having seen a few showers in the northeast of Scotland during Tuesday, it's a drier spell on Wednesday and Thursday here, with mostly just sunny spells. And Western Scotland, barely a cloud in sight first thing, one or two mist patches for Northern Ireland, otherwise largely fine. However, as we get into England and Wales, here we've got more extensive cloud cover, and the rain that we started the week with, well, that's turned to showers. Nevertheless, through the Wash, parts of Norfolk, Suffolk, perhaps Kent, we'll see quite a number of showers continuing through the day, along with a brisk northeast breeze and a lot of cloud. That's going to make it feel considerably cooler than elsewhere across the UK. So low to mid-teens on the east coast, where we've got some sunny spells elsewhere, 15 to 17 Celsius. We start Thursday with widespread clear skies. Still one or two showers through the day across the far southeast, but otherwise, for many, it's simply a sunny day. Best day of the week widely across the UK, and feeling pleasant enough in that sunshine with light winds as...
£30,000 cash.